Hi, I'm Joe from the Property Gurus, and today I'm going to tell you the 7 essential things that you need to do before you even start thinking about your loft conversion. Now, loft conversions, if you've got the opportunity to do it, I think it's an absolute no-brainer. It will add value to your house, but more importantly, it will give you extra living space and really change the way your whole house operates. So if you can do it, and if you've got the money to pay for it, then it's absolutely a no-brainer to convert your loft. However, if you've never done it before and you don't know where to start, then today this video will give you the 7 things that you really should do. It won't cost you any money to do these 7 things, but if you can go through these 7 different tests and steps, then you'll be in a much stronger position to know, firstly, how much, secondly, how big, and thirdly, how you go about converting your loft. So let's get started. So number 1, the first thing that everybody needs to think about and needs to do before they can start on the journey of converting their loft is to check out whether it's possible. Not every house in the UK has a big enough loft to be able to convert, and not every house is allowed to convert its loft. So there are a few things that you can do to check out whether or not your house is suitable. The first and most obvious thing is to make sure that you've got a loft space. Most houses in the UK that are built in the last 100 years have a void in the loft. So you'll have a space above the middle floor where it's either an attic or there's just a void underneath the roof. But if you don't have one of those, then obviously you can't do a loft conversion. Assuming that you do have an attic or a void underneath your roof, then the next question to answer is it big enough to be able to convert into usable space? So in old houses, so any house that's been built prior to the 1960s, the loft space was very usually large and big enough to convert into livable accommodation. But not every house has enough space to build, to put a suitable roof space in. So the first thing to check is whether or not any of your neighbours have converted their loft. So if your house is similar to the rest of the houses on your street, and in the UK, a lot of roads were built in a uniform fashion. So you'll find that the same type of accommodation runs up and down the street. So have a look at your neighbours. If most of your neighbours have loft conversions, they've got dormers on the back, they've got Velux windows on the front, then that's a pretty good sign to say that your house is going to be suitable for a loft conversion. If your next door neighbour's got one and it's the same house as yours, then it's a no-brainer. You're definitely going to be able to convert your loft. If you're not 100% sure, then what you should do is go into the attic space. So open up your entry point, and sometimes they're in the bathroom, sometimes they're in the hallway, on the landing, outside your bedrooms. Open up that loft entry point, and if you can, climb up in there and measure how high the ceiling height is. So the ridge point, which is the pointy bit at the top of the house, so the bit across the top is called the ridge. The ridge point will tell you the absolute highest point from the floor to the top of the roof on the underside. Now, to convert a loft and have a really good headspace, you're looking to build something that's got about 2.4 metres internally of headspace. So to achieve that, you really need 2.7, 2.8 metres to that ridge height, because you're going to have to put some timbers and some insulation above the room itself. So if you've got 2.6, 2.7, 2.8 as a measurement from the floor to the ridge, then it's a good bet that you've got enough space to build that loft out. But get up there and check it out, and if you can, that's the first sign. The next thing that you need to check out is whether or not you're going to need planning permission to convert your loft. Now, there's 2 forms in the UK. The government, a number of years ago, to make it easier for people to convert their lofts and put extensions on their properties, they brought in new rules which were called permitted development. And permitted development allows you to automatically do certain things, and one of those is a loft conversion within certain limits. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, do I live in a conservation area? If you live in a conservation area, and they tend to be older towns, villages, nice areas of natural beauty, roads that are kept similar to the way they were built 100 years ago. So a lot of areas, there's conservation areas because they decided they didn't want new, fancy, unusual buildings being built in places that had historical importance. So if you live in a conservation area, you need to get planning permission to do anything to your house. You're not allowed to do anything under permitted development. The permitted development rules do not apply to conservation areas. But assuming you don't live in a conservation area, you just live in a road that's a standard road, then you may be able to do it automatically in the planning permission, in the permitted development. And the way you can check that is there are limits. So as long as you don't have to build higher than your existing roof height. So if you did the measurement we talked about in step 1, then you'll know you don't. Or you don't need to build something that is unusual or huge, then you probably will be able to do the loft under permitted development. If your neighbour's done one, you can ask them, did they apply for planning permission or did they do it under permitted development? And the key issue with permitted development is that you don't need to apply for it. So you can automatically start your build. You do not need to wait until the council has reviewed any plans and made a decision as to whether you're allowed to do it. You're automatically allowed to do it. So assuming you don't live in a conservation area, assuming you don't want to do something that is very weird, wonderful, wacky or huge, then you probably will be able to do it under permitted development. Ask your neighbour, ask somebody on your road who's done one. They'll probably tell you what they did, and then that means it's going to be much easier. The third issue is, how much is it going to cost? And this is the acid test. How much will it cost to convert your loft? You may get one, you may get 2 extra bedrooms, you probably get an extra bathroom, and that's all valuable space, both to live in and when you come to sell the house. But it comes at a cost. And for most people, we don't have tens of thousands of pounds spare waiting to do something with. So you need to establish, can I afford it? I don't know. I can't give you an exact price for what your loft conversion will cost. What I can tell you is it's not cheap. So a standard, there's going to be a range of prices for loft conversions. I've been doing this for a number of years, and I think for any house, any sort of terraced house or semi-detached house where you're putting on something where you're going to get another 25 or 30 square meters of living space on the floor, you'll be looking somewhere between 40,000 and anything up to and above 75,000, depending on who your builder is, what the finish you want is, and how large it ultimately becomes. There's other issues such as access. Is it easy to put scaffold up? Can they get the materials to your house? So there's a number of issues that are specific to your property. But I would be surprised if you can do it for less than 40,000, and you should be able to do it for 60 or 70,000. But as a rule of thumb, I would say if you think about £50,000 being a starting point, then that's probably not going to be a million miles away from what it might cost you. So it's that sort of number that you need to be thinking about. We'll get into the details in a minute as to how we get a specific quote and how you go about making sure you get the best quote. But I would say you need to have tens of thousands of pounds. Now, one of the options is that you could borrow some money from your bank. Because it will add value to your property, then your lender, whoever provides your mortgage, may be prepared to give you more money against your existing mortgage to spend on the extra living space, because it will increase the value of the property. So it's worth looking into that. So even if you don't have the spare cash, you may be able to go and borrow it. And at the moment, rates are very low for borrowing money. So it may be worth looking into that. If you need that extra bedroom, you need that home office, you need another bathroom because the kids are getting older and everybody wants more space, it's definitely worth looking into. The next point is drawings. So I haven't come on to builders yet, and the reason for that is that you'll need drawings before you can get an accurate quote from a builder. So the next point that you need to be aware of is you're going to need some drawings before you can talk to a builder and before you can build your loft. Now, who does the drawings? Where do you get them from? And I think if you've never done this before, it's hard to know where to start. Now, there's two sets of drawings that every householder needs for their loft. The first set of drawings, and the most basic ones, are drawings for planning. So these are drawings that you've probably seen. You may have seen some of your friends or your neighbours have had them. If you go onto the council website and do a search on your road, you can click in and you'll see drawings that have been submitted for either planning permission or approval from permitted development. And these drawings are pretty basic. They're just, they show the elevations of your property, so what your house looks like from the front and the back and the side, and then floor plans of your property. So the bird's eye view, which shows all the rooms on each level. And so it's just like a bird's eye view of that. Those drawings are put together in the majority by architects or architectural engineers, and you have to pay for that. So unless you're an architect yourself, you will need to get somebody to come round and they'll have a look at your house. Then they do a measurement of your whole property. So they'll measure all the rooms, all the walls, how high the roof is, how wide it is, how deep it is, your house. And they will do a scale drawing of your house as it is today. And then for the loft conversion, they will draw the additional area that you're building for the loft, how big the floors are going to be, where the bathroom's going to be, the layout. So you'll need to have a think about what you want in your loft, whether you want 1 room, 2 rooms, an ensuite bathroom, a separate bathroom with its own entry point for everybody to use, no bathroom, a study. So there's a whole different range of options depending on how big your loft is and what it looks like. And you have to tell the architect that when they come round. They'll then draw it, show it, they'll send it to you. You then need to check it and make sure you're happy with it and that it works and that it's got the right size rooms and it's got the bathroom that you want and you can fit the bath in or the shower or whatever you like. But you need to make sure they're accurate, because when you finalise those drawings and give them to a builder, that's what he's going to give you a quote based upon what you've drawn. So if you then change your mind, that's going to throw everything up in the air, which you really don't want to do that. So you can get an architect to do those drawings. It's not cheap to get an architect to do the drawings. Again, I've done this quite a lot, and I would say the cheapest you'll probably find is maybe somewhere in the region of £1,000, maybe £750 if you find somebody who's good value, but somewhere in the region of £1,000. You can pay a lot more than that. I wouldn't recommend it. If you're doing a loft conversion, you don't need to pay somebody £4,000 or £5,000 to do fancy drawings with 3D coloured visions and CGI and various other things. You don't need that, because at the end of the day, it's not a new build property. If you're doing something where you're building your dream house in the future, then maybe. But for this sort of thing, you want somebody who's just going to tell you, what can I get? How big's the space? How's it going to work? Where's the staircase going to go? Which is always a critical question when you're doing any loft conversion. Where's the staircase going to come up to in the top room? How's that going to work? Where's the door of the room? Where are the windows going to be? Where do we need to put heating? All those sorts of questions. So don't pay a fortune on it. To get the best possible deal, you may know somebody. If you know somebody and they offer you to do a cheap job, then that's great. But most people don't, and most people don't know where to start. Go on the internet, go onto Google, type in, I need drawings for a loft conversion, and you'll find there's a number of different websites come up. There's quite a few different websites that compare people. So they're a bit like Go Compare or Money Supermarket, but for architects and these drawings. So you can go onto these websites, type in your details, what you're looking for, and then you'll get quotes through from different engineers and different architects. And that will be the best way to get the cheapest possible deal. And you can also then see the reviews and get some feedback on these guys. You can send some emails and speak to them. You'll get a feel for whether you want to work with them and whether you want them to do your drawings. Because at the end of the day, they're just doing a drawing. You probably won't need them again in the future. So it's a one-off transaction. Make sure you don't overpay for it, and make sure you get somebody that is going to be good at doing it, that you're happy with. So I definitely recommend go on, get 5 or 6 quotes, and then talk to a few of them, and then pick the one that you like. Then the next thing you're going to need is some drawings from a structural engineer. So you've got the drawings from the architect. That's great. That's just really an outline of what you're going to build. The builder then, before he can finalize the actual build, he needs to know what structural information there is. So in a loft, you're going to have to insert some steels. The ceiling in your house is not strong enough to walk on. It's not strong enough to put furniture on or put a bath in full of water and a person in it. You need to put some steel beams that are going to sit on top of the walls, and your new floor will sit on top of that steel structure. Now, those steel beams add extra weight and pressure to your house. So you need an engineer who's qualified, who can work out how big those steel beams need to be, and to make sure that your house is strong enough to be able to support the extra weight from the loft. So the structural engineer will come in. He'll do the same as the first guy, the architect. He will do a full measurement of the property. He needs to be 100% accurate. And then he will work out how long, how wide, how deep, and how heavy your steel beams need to be, how many they need to be, how many of them need to fit together, where they go, and then how the rest of the structure fits into that. So the timber that will then be attached to the steel. So it's quite complicated. It takes quite a long time. There's a lot of calculations involved in it. So you'll probably get 10 or 15 pages of calculations which show all the loads and the stress and all the rest of it. And these are important for 2 reasons. First one is the builder needs it, because he's got to then go and buy those steels and include them in your build. And the steels will come to thousands of pounds. They're expensive. Some of them have to be lifted in on a crane, depending on how your house is and how heavy they are. So that has to be included in the cost, because a crane's expensive. So that's the first point. The builder needs to get them, firstly, work out how much it's going to cost, but secondly, to do the actual build. He'll follow the diagrams and instructions from the structural the calcs. But the second point is that it needs to go to building control. Now that you've got your drawings, you're able to talk to the builders. And this is builders for a specific quote. So your drawings are essentially a blueprint of what it is that you're looking to build. And you then want to get a minimum of 5 different builders to give you a quote. So never take the first quote that you get, and never just go with 1 or 2 quotes, because builders, that's their game. They're in this market. They know that they're not going to win every single quote. They probably win 1 out of every 5 or 6 that they're pitching for. And they may not also have the time to do it. So you need to have some options. So get 5 or 6 quotes. And again, the way to do that is to go on the internet. So you may know a builder. He might be recommended to you. That's great. If you do, get him over. Get him to have a look at the drawings. Get him to look at your house. Have a look at the specifics. Because there's always things that builders will look for when they come round that aren't on the drawings. So they want to see things like your existing drains, how they work, how they're going to get the new bathroom to fit in with your drainage, any issues with regards to access for scaffolding and where they're going to store the materials, how they're going to get in and out of the property, is the parking, all those sort of things. So they want to come round. So if you get somebody who's recommended to you, that's great. Get them round, get them to give you a quote. But go out and get some new quotes from people that you don't know. And the way to do that, go on Google, type in, I need a builder. And there's tons of different websites. So there's mybuilder.com, or you can go on Checkertrade, or there's a variety of other ones. So go on there, have a look at the reviews, have a look at the builders, see who's local to you, check out where they've been building, what their reviews say, and then find 4 or 5 of them, contact them, either phone them up, email, and say, okay, I've got the drawings, I want to do a loft conversion, this is when I want to do it, and that's a critical part. Tell them, if you want to do it as soon as possible, they need to know that. If you want to do it in 6 months' time and you're just planning, again, they need to know that, because you need to know that they're available. If they say, oh, yeah, I'm booked up for the next 12 months, and some builders are, then obviously that's not going to work for you if you need it doing now. So go out, get the builders, give them the drawings, and then get them to give you a detailed, accurate quote. So tell them, what you want in your bathroom: shower, toilet, bath, sink, radiator, whatever you want. If you want underfloor heating, or if you want special lighting, LED lighting, you want some built-in cupboards, tell them it all up front, because you always pay a lot more if you tell people once they've started, because it's a monopoly position for them. If they're already doing your build and you say, oh, can you do this, that, or the other, it will cost you more than if you put it in the upfront quote, because they need to win the quote first before they can then come and do your job. So get as much detail as you can into that initial discussion, get the quotes, and then once you've got the quotes, you can then have a look at all the options and decide which one, and speak to the builders and get some dialogue going. Get 2 or 3 that you like, talk to them about the price. Always, always, always ask them if they can do a better deal. If there's something that they can do, whether they can reduce the price or they can include something else, or just ask them, because they will have put a quote in that's probably a bit higher than they're prepared to do the job for. And you'll feel better if you've asked for some sort of price reduction and they give you one. You'll feel like you've negotiated, you've done a good deal, and they will feel that they're doing something to win the job. So it works for them too. So never just take the price that's offered. Sometimes a builder might say, look, I can't do it for any less. That's the absolute best price I've given you first time. And that's fine, because you've asked the question. They've told you they can't do it. You know exactly what the bottom line is. So get a little bit of negotiation going. Get your final prices, and then make a decision based on how you feel. So if you didn't quite like one of those builders, they're not quite what you wanted, or a bit aggressive, or maybe they would, weren't very friendly, then don't go with them. Don't go with somebody that you're not sure about. Go with the guy you think, yeah, I liked him. He gave me some more information. He wasn't too pushy. He was just offering me some advice, and someone you feel happy having in your house every day for the next 3 or 4 months, because it might take a long time, and you don't want to get somebody coming in that you're not really happy with, or you don't feel comfortable having around your family all the time. Okay, last point before you can actually get started is party wall. Now, you may have heard of party wall agreements. You may have been involved in one if your neighbour has wanted to do anything involving the party wall. But the party wall is the wall that sits between your house and your neighbour's house. So if you live in a semi-detached house or a terraced house, you'll have at least one party wall. So in a semi-detached house, it's the wall down the middle between the two houses. In a terraced house, if you're in a mid-terraced house, you'll have 2 party walls, which is basically both of your walls have your neighbour's house on the other side of them. Before you can do any work that involves the party wall, you have to get your neighbour's consent. And this sounds fairly easy, but can be more difficult. So in order to do that, you have to follow a certain procedure. So the rules, the law says that you're allowed to do things with the party wall. So you're allowed to cut a hole in the party wall to put your steel beams in, for example, which is the main thing you need for loft conversion. But in order to make sure that it's safe and it's being done correctly, you need to tell your neighbour that you're going to do it, and then you need to give them more information about what's going to be done and when it's going to happen. Now, in order to make sure that everything is above board and legal, there is a certain process. So you have to issue them with a standard letter and give them a certain period of time. So the first letter they've got 14 days to respond to. Now, it's definitely recommended to get an expert to do this. So you're going to have to get a party wall surveyor to do this for you. Now, as with all the other things, the best way to do this, the best way to keep the cost down, is go onto Google, put in, I need a party wall surveyor, and you'll find hundreds of different options there. So similar to the previous options, there will be some websites that offer you multiple party wall surveyors, so you can put your details in and you'll get 5 or 6 quotes. Or you could just find some that you like, or you might get somebody who's recommended to you by your neighbours. But either way, get a few quotes. As with everything else, get 4 or 5 quotes, because the range of cost for this is huge. So I've known people who've paid £5,000 or £6,000 to party wall surveyors, but you can do it as cheaply as £65 to £100. So there's a really big spread. Now, The cheaper end of that is where you issue a letter, the first letter, which says, I notify you as my neighbour that I would like to do some work to the party wall. If your neighbour, if you're very friendly with your neighbour, or your neighbour's pretty relaxed, then they can actually sign that letter and give you consent, and that's all you need to do. You just get their consent. They say, I'm aware you're going to do the loft. That's fine. Please go ahead. So that's the perfect outcome as a homeowner. If they don't agree to it at that level, then they can actually say, well, no, I don't. I want to get an expert in, a surveyor, who's going to come and take some photos of my house as it is now. They'll take like hundreds of photos of their property. And then if in the future, when you're doing the work, some cracks appear or some damage appears, they've got documentary evidence which says this crack wasn't here previously. Since you did your work, it's appeared. It's your fault, and you have to pay for that to be repaired, which is fair enough. So they can do that. And really, you need to talk to your neighbour, establish exactly what the situation is, and then you'll see whether they want the surveyor to come in. The best outcome really is if the surveyor works for both of you, because the party wall is independent. So you can have the surveyor working for both you and the neighbour, and all they do is report on the condition of the wall and any issues that come out of that. If you have problems with your neighbour and you offer a surveyor to them and they say, actually, I don't want that surveyor, I want my own surveyor, then you could switch to have that surveyor as well. If your neighbour doesn't agree to that, then you will potentially have to have two surveyors. And then in a worst case, if there's a major problem in the future, there is an option where they can bring in a third surveyor to adjudicate between the two surveyors if they can't agree things. All of that will be paid for by you. So you want to go down the path of least resistance. Try and get your neighbour to consent to you doing the loft. If they've done one before, it shouldn't be a problem. If they want to do one in the future, it shouldn't be a problem. But sometimes you find that for whatever reason, the neighbour just doesn't want to be helpful. The neighbour's just awkward, and you end up having to pay for the surveyor and do all the photographs and everything else. So it might cost you £1,000 or £2,000 or possibly more. But as with everything else, get lots of quotes, get the best surveyor that you're happy with, that you've got a good relationship with, and make sure that you do it properly. Because if you don't do it properly, you might find that when you come to start your build, then the builder's not allowed to do it because you haven't got the party wall agreements in place. And without that, then the builder can't start putting the steels into your house. And it is really annoying if that happens. So definitely you need to get the party wall agreed and signed before you start the build, because you don't want to be taking a gamble on that. So there we go. That's the 7 main points that you can do some research on now. You can look into, you can start doing some work, put together some information, maybe get some ideas as to who you're going to use for your drawings, your party wall, all of that, your builders, all of those sort of things. And this is even before you've started the actual build. But if you do this and you follow these 7 points and get your ducks in a row, then I guarantee your build will be far better and you'll have far less hassle down the track. Because if you don't do any of these points, if you miss out one of these points, you'll find when you come to do the build that you're going to have to go back to the start, and it's going to cause delays. Your builder's going to be upset. Your neighbours will be upset. You might have the council upset if you need planning permission or you haven't done the correct paperwork. All of these things take time. I would give yourself 3 months to sort all these things out. It takes a while to get drawings. It takes a while to get party wall. It takes quite a while to get planning permission. So all of that will take time. So if you're thinking about doing a loft, start planning now and stick with these 7 points. Good luck.